When my husband died, the house became quieter than I had ever imagined it could be. Not immediately. At first there were casseroles from neighbors, paperwork from the bank, sympathy cards stacked on the kitchen counter. People filled the rooms with soft voices and careful hugs. Then, slowly, everyone went back to their lives. Including my daughter. My husband had left me $400,000. Not a fortune by any grand standard, but enough to retire quietly, enough to keep the lights on, without worrying about every grocery bill. He had always been practical like that. Make sure you're comfortable, he told me during one of his last calm afternoons in the hospital. Not dependent. At the time, I thought he meant dependent on the world. I didn't realize he might have meant something closer to home. The first few weeks after the funeral, my daughter called occasionally. Short conversations, busy conversations. She sounded distracted, but I told myself that grief makes everyone strange for a while. Then the calls stretched further apart. 2 weeks. A month. Then longer. At first I kept my phone near me, almost like a reflex. When it buzzed, my heart would lift a little. Most of the time it was a pharmacy notification or a telemarketer who sounded younger than my daughter. I tried not to read too much into it. She had always been independent. Strong-willed. Even as a child she didn't ask for help unless she absolutely needed something. I used to think that was a good trait. Months passed in a pattern that slowly stopped surprising me. Morning coffee at the small table by the window. A walk around the block if the weather allowed it. Occasional lunches with a neighbor who had also outlived her husband and spoke about it, with a quiet acceptance that I envied. The money stayed where it was. Carefully managed. I met once with a financial advisor recommended by my bank. We arranged things conservatively, nothing dramatic. Just enough structure to make sure I wouldn't have to depend on anyone later. Sometimes, in the evenings, I would think about calling my daughter myself. Just to check in. But something always stopped me. Not pride exactly. More like curiosity. I wanted to see how long the silence would last if I didn't interrupt it. By the 8th month, the quiet had become ordinary. Not pleasant, but familiar. I had stopped carrying my phone from room to room. Sometimes it sat charging in the kitchen, while I read in the living room, which is why the call startled me. It was a Tuesday night. 10:03 p.m. I remember the exact time because late calls always carry a different kind of weight. I answered on the 3rd ring. Hello. There was a brief pause before her voice came through. Mom. It had been so long that for a moment it sounded unfamiliar. Yes. Another pause. I was hoping you'd still be up. I waited. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention the months that had passed since the last conversation. Her voice had a tightness in it. Not sadness exactly. More like pressure. I need to ask you something, she said. The sentence landed exactly the way I had expected it might, someday. I leaned back slightly in my chair. What is it? There was a quick exhale on the other end. Mom, I'm in a bit of a situation right now. It's temporary. I just need some help getting through the next couple months. Her words came faster now. I need $20,000. Just a loan. I can pay you back once things settle. 20,000. The number hung between us. What struck me most wasn't the request itself, it was the smoothness of it. The way she moved directly into the explanation without circling through concern first. No curiosity about my life. No hesitation about the amount. I realized something in that moment that probably should have been obvious years ago. Silence hadn't meant distance. It had meant there was no current need. I let the quiet stretch for a few seconds. On the other end of the line, I could hear her shifting slightly. Maybe pacing. Mom, she said. That was when I answered. Just one sentence. I think the 8 months of silence cost more than $20,000. The words came out calmly. No sharp edges. Just a simple observation. For a moment there was nothing. No breathing, no movement. Then she spoke again, but her voice had changed. What does that mean? It wasn't anger, it sounded more like confusion. I took a slow breath. It means, I said gently, that relationships don't work like bank accounts. Another long silence. I could almost feel her trying to find the right response, the familiar path that had always worked before. But there wasn't one this time. Well, she said eventually, her tone uncertain now, I didn't realize you felt that way. I didn't argue. I hope things work out for you, I told her. The conversation ended a minute later. Not with anger, just with an unfinished feeling neither of us tried to repair. The next week, I met again with the financial advisor. We adjusted a few things, nothing dramatic. Just practical changes, legal arrangements that ensured the money my husband left would remain dedicated to my care, my living expenses, my future. Security, he had called it. Walking home afterward, I thought about my daughter. I still loved her. That hadn't changed. But love, I had finally realized, wasn't the same as availability, and sometimes the clearest boundary you can set is simply refusing to pretend that nothing has happened. She hasn't called again yet. Maybe she will. Maybe she won't. Either way, the phone sits quietly on the kitchen counter most nights now. And for the first time in a long while, the silence doesn't feel like waiting.